goes without saying, talk to customers, talk to people who would actually buy your product, even if, you don't have anything right now. You're saying, we've got this theory that whatever we're doing will work. Talk to whoever will buy it, and they will confirm, because they are the most brutal.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Student Enterprise TV, your weekly source of inspiration, practical tips and nonsense. Today we have a very special guest, Alex, who you'll hear more about in a second. Nice way of Alex. And my name is Callum with a K. So Alex, how are you today?
I'm okay, getting on with it. Carrying on with, technology development and trying to run a startup in the middle of a global pandemic. It's good fun, definitely.
Would you recommend it to others?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question.
Straight in within the tough questions.
It depends. Most of the time, yes.
Okay. We'll ease off the gas a little bit. We'll start with the more easy questions before we get into the interrogation. But look, tell us more about yourself, and then we'll hear about your business as well. So just sure. Where did you study? What did you study? All that good stuff. And where are you from?
So I am originally from south of England in Dorset, and I came up to Edinburgh to study at Heriot-Watt University. I graduated in 2018. I did computing and electronics as a Bachelor of Engineering. And from there, actually, my dissertation that I did for my degree, I carried on and used to start my business. The technology was in a really kind of crude stage back then, and it's since developed a lot. That's why Edinburgh is my base, and I have no regrets about starting up here. It's been a great ecosystem to start up in, and there's a lot of support available out there.
Tell us more about your business and the idea, please.
Well, yeah, so, like any startup business, things are, in the early stages, things were very much up in the air, trying to figure out, where your technology goes, particularly when you kind of create a technology with a kind of person in mind who will use it, but not exactly, say, a market. So the current kind of the mature realization of the business is that we are building a little chip that sits on a robot, in a smart speaker, in a drone, whatever, and that chip allows us to see the world using sound, using echolocation, like a bat does. You can think of it like a camera that, instead of, say, capturing light like our webcams are, it captures sound, and instead of seeing, say, brightness and color, it sees distance and depth. And that makes it really useful for computers, machines, robots, because it gives them an understanding of where things are in an environment in a way that we take for granted. So we're looking to integrate this into a lot of products inside the home, because the beauty of our system is that it ensures people's privacy, that it can't recognize, say, facial features, but it can kind of see what's going on and help you out with whatever it's applied to. So in a smart speaker, you could be walking around the kitchen, following a recipe, and it will be able to see, say, when you go to a cupboard and you pick something out and you come back, and rather than saying, next ingredient, please, it will go, okay, he's already got it. So that's, one use case. Another is in robotics, where we're using the sensor to understand a room and move around that room accordingly. We've had a long slog so far with developing it. I'm 2 years in now, and we still don't have a fully kind of operational end sensor as we will eventually have. But even then, we've got another 2 years until the actual release sensor is available. But nevertheless, it's been, interesting and exciting journey to be on. that was a long answer to that question.
So
Sorry.
it's comprehensive. It's comprehensive. We got there. No,
Yeah, I kind of
thank
forgot
you.
what the question was.
Me too. It's all good.
Yeah.
And obviously, you and I met Alex in the Edinburgh Business School Incubator,
Yeah.
where I look after you and a lot
Yes.
of other really cool incubees. So I know the journey you've been on. Could you maybe just tell us a little bit more about? You alluded to it there, but more the sort of the product fit and market fit, just how that whole process was and how you found that. And I guess if you were to do it again, any lessons learned or any advice to share on people that are trying to just get that fit with their product and the market they're trying to serve would be really great.
So I'll take that kind of finding product market fit element first, because that is, yeah, that's undoubtedly the most important question that any startup ever has to face. And once you have it nailed, you have it nailed, and usually you're successful from kind of then on. If there's a market for it and the demand is genuinely there, not imagined, but genuinely there, you'll find it far easier to be successful. So on that, one thing I would say, I went through it trying to find product market fit. As you know, I went all over the place looking initially at kind of electronics hobbyists, kind of making just stuff, like gadgets and things, to home security and into sort of small consumer robotics like robot vacuum cleaners, all over the place. And ultimately, we've kind of landed in an area where actually we understand that there isn't going to be one kind of killer application for our technology, and instead it's going to be a scattergun approach where we have benefits over other sensors in certain areas and drawbacks in different markets as well. But something I will say is that it's so easy to convince yourself that there is demand for what you're doing in a certain area, because we have our own intrinsic biases. We look for confirmation of hope that we have. Ultimately, as an entrepreneur, you have to have hope in what you're doing, and you have to believe in it, but you have to balance your belief with reality. And if you approach people, as I did with you a few times, almost looking for, do you think this is a good idea? The vast majority of people will say, hey, that sounds great, when in fact there are problems with it. So looking for people who are going to be honest, which you were many times, and also being willing to hear kind of when people are being honest and take it in and reflect on it is incredibly vital to having that product market fit and eventually getting there. And it's not going to happen immediately. It will take a long time to kind of get your head around it and understand completely what your customers want. It goes without saying, talk to customers, talk to people who would actually buy your product, even if you don't have anything right now. You're saying, we've got this theory that whatever we're doing will work. Talk to whoever will buy it, and they will confirm, because they are the most brutal out of everyone who's going to give you feedback. If they're not interested, they'll say, nope, we're not interested. And that's what you need at the early stage. But don't let it get you down. Just look somewhere else and review the plan. Yeah, that was very comprehensive again.
That's exactly what we want. We don't want to skim on the details. I think, removing emotion, because we can fall in love with it as the inventor or the creator.
And you will. Yeah. Naturally. It is your baby. One of the things with a startup that people find quite endearing with startups is how much effort you put into it. And you often won't realize until later on, but there will be, say, people kind of watching what you're doing and kind of going, how on earth are they managing to do that, to spend that much time? Initially in the first kind of 9 months when I was fully working on the startup, like when I just started out, it was non-stop, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week because I loved it. And to me, it was just like, you know, that was normal. That was what I wanted to do. And others would look at me and kind of go, this is madness, the amount of effort you're putting into this, hold back. But you really desperately want it to work, and you have to pull yourself away from it and have a frank conversation, almost be brutal to yourself. Because ultimately, if you're invested enough in it, you won't let whatever kind of negative feedback you have affect your vision. You just modify your vision and take it in that direction. That's generally how it works.
I think such a great point is that because our business, our product, our service, we are so passionate, and that's what drives us, and it doesn't feel like work. But at the same time, as you say, we can't let that passion blind us to criticism. The fact that there might not even be a market for it. And I guess thirdly, having just been on holiday last week, for me as well, it's like we also need to take time away from our passion so that it doesn't consume us entirely, or get that same buzz from other places.
I mean, you can. There was a period when I was working, you know, in that non-stop kind of 7 days a week, 12 hours a day period, where I just went completely down the rabbit hole, like completely wasting time on something that was fantasy. In my head, I was developing a feature that absolutely no one was asking for. But in my head, I thought, hey, this will be really cool and we'll get people's attention. And that's what matters. It doesn't matter. People have to want it, you know? So yeah, if I had taken a week break, it would have sorted me out. And eventually then when I did actually took Christmas, it took having Christmas, a week off, to make me go, hang on, what? What have I done? I've just wasted months. So yeah, breaks, definitely a good idea.
Is that because you're Santa that you took Christmas off? Is that your second job? Is that how you're funding this? Busted. I think, no, you make another really great point, Alex, about the fact that really deliver value to the marketplace, not quirkiness. Like, quirkiness has got its place, and that can be part of the value. If the customer doesn't value the quirkiness, it doesn't matter. If it's just for your own ego, bluntly yourself, that's a waste of everyone's time. So I love that. A
lot of us have kind of almost an American point of kind of a Silicon Valley-esque viewpoint of startups.
Yeah.
There is kind of, you said the quirkiness is a good word, because there is kind of that allure that startups have, and we want to have it as well, because we know that other startups look fun to work for, and we want to have that, and you know that all builds into it, and you can distract yourself with things like that. Ultimately, people want to be part of an effective team, and they want to feel fulfilled in the work that they're doing, and you know, enjoy it. But quirkiness doesn't do that.
This is not on my list of questions. I keep glancing. However, we're going to go there now because this is what the best people do. You say rabbit holes. I call it brain farting, or whatever else you want to call it. But the rhetoric then around entrepreneurship, starting your own business, not naming any names or any publications, but what do you make of it? Like, in terms of, is it reflective of reality in terms of this is what entrepreneurship is really like, or how far removed from it do you think it is? And that's a very loaded question, I realise, as I ask it. That's why I'm a terrible interviewer. But,
no, I actually think that's quite a good question, and it is a very difficult one to answer. I can kind of answer it on kind of balancing things out for and against. So there is undoubtedly a positive effect from kind of the startup culture, as it were, in that it propels you to go out and meet others, to learn from others, and to engage in a community. It can be kind of all-encompassing, yes.
Just go with
it. I'm an engineer, not a linguist.
Marketing guy, somewhere we just love everything anyway, so just go for it.
You know, that can suck you in and distract you, whereas if you kind of reject it outright, you can almost be a bit of a pariah, in that if you ultimately just go, no, I'm having absolutely none of it, you learn none of the lessons that anyone else is learning. And instead you kind of forge your own path, but you have to, it's so much harder to get through the barriers that naturally present themselves to a startup if you do it alone. And that's where kind of the community can come in. It's just finding a balance, really. I kind of flip-flop between being really engaged in the community and then kind of coming out of it. And to be honest, looking at everyone else, that's what they do too. You don't have to be going to every networking event, because if you're going to every networking event, you're not working. You're not actually working on your product. And you and I will know people who do exactly that, but sometimes they'll network to the degree where they can kind of do work by proxy almost. If you network enough, you can potentially raise some investment and then get someone else to kind of do it. But for a lot of people like me, that takes the entire point of having a startup kind of away from you. In the sort of engagement in the community and sort of how much you like kind of the startup ecosystem is entirely dependent on your personality. But do not be worried if it's not your cup of tea. You don't have to engage fully in it. You can dip your toes in and take from it what you will. But I just say don't outright reject it, because I think that would just be a mistake.
It's a great soundbite. I'm going to definitely take that bit out of the interview. I loved it.
Yeah.
Cut it. That was good. We talked there 20 minutes before. No, I'm kidding. So, thank you, Alex. Changing tack for a second, if we can. You mentioned it briefly, but you said about your sensors and how they're different to your competitors, in the sense that, in some spaces there's different, advantages with your sensor over others. Just talk a bit more about your unique selling point, your USP, and how you differ to your competitors, please.
Yeah. So ultimately, what we've realized with our technology is that we're not creating something new that can just be plonked in to whatever, say your next phone. We do actually have the capacity, we believe, haven't fully tested it yet, but we have the capacity to actually perform facial scanning with close range versions of our technology. But ultimately, cameras can do that absolutely fine at the moment. What we're ultimately developing is almost a foundation for a new building kind of to be built. And you can think of that building as a new generation of AI, ultimately to improve what AI can do, how much it can see, what it can notice, and the data it can collect. You need to broaden the amount of data that it can collect, and the way you broaden it is through having multiple different sensors, or sensors that are that generally capture more data. So we're looking to build that foundation out so others can build on top of it. And that's ultimately where we found the most success with our customers, where we say, look, we're just building something basic here and we'll support you in whatever application you're doing. But ultimately it is up to you to interpret and use it how you wish. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's helpful. Thank you. Alex and I got sidetracked for about 20 minutes there, completely off topic, completely random. So we're now back on with the questions, the interrogation. Alex, what has been your biggest challenge with developing IMERAI to date, and how did you overcome it, please?
Yeah, well, you can kind of segment challenges into two areas. One, running the business, and two is technology. I'd say the biggest is actually running the business. Ultimately, as with any business, you need money to survive. And there was, I initially started the business off savings, limited savings I had from kind of saving up throughout uni, and with a job I had when I was in sixth form. But for a long time, I ran off fumes. It was, looking back, it's kind of, oh wow, I really didn't live on anything at all there. But the biggest challenge was ultimately transitioning from kind of doing it in my flat to something more structured, and part of that was raising investment. It took about a year in total to raise a modest investment round. Admittedly, it's modest because we're early stage and we're high risk. We might be technology, but that doesn't mean that, you know, we have it any easier than a lot of other companies. Yeah, raising investment was a journey that I didn't expect to be as insightful as it was. One of the things that really kind of tripped us up was how we weren't pushing for the investment to kind of complete. The longest period of that kind of 12 months was actually just waiting for other people to get back to us. And with me being kind of overly concerned about being polite, I ended up just going, they'll get back to me when they get back to me on certain things. And ultimately, with things like that, when your livelihood depends on it, you have to push, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you. You have to say, I need a reply on this. It ended up being that, say, because we were kind of so relaxed with how things were going, it pushed into raising money during lockdown. We actually completed our investment in the middle of the most intense lockdown, the most intense restriction on freedoms that the UK has probably ever faced since, you know, since 1600s or something like that. And it ended up being that, you know, everyone was just kind of emailing each other at 4 p.m. and then it rolled over the next day, and there wasn't any kind of structure in place. We didn't say, we need this to be done now because we want to carry on with technology development and things that we're using the investment round for. So really being authoritative has been one of the most challenging things, and just sticking your neck out. You might annoy some people. Ultimately, it's kind of your job. If you're running the business, you have to be necky in some areas, and once if you do push things too far, you just apologize, and the vast majority of people will say, yeah, I understand, you know, I get it. And don't lash out at people as well, as that's it's very tempting to do when you're under pressure. It will come back to bite you if you let other people have it with your frustrations. Find someone you trust, like Callum, to vent at, and, you know, he'll give it back to you just as frankly, and you'll get over it and get through it. So yeah, biggest challenge definitely kind of balancing finances, getting the investment through, but ultimately well worth doing, because I learned a hell of a lot from it, a hell of a lot of life skills, let alone kind of raising money skills.
That was a beautiful answer. I'm almost cheering up. So thank you for that. And I love the phrase "be necky." I must steal that. That's so good.
Yeah.
I like that. But it's funny how you say about being British. I can relate to that as well. Like a lot of other startups we work with say the same thing about being too polite or do we upset someone, or no, they said they would get back to me. But you and I both know when someone says, I will get back to you, that means no, you will get back to them, because they'll forget. Life happens.
The modern world doesn't work kind of in the British old sensibilities of politeness and, you know, I await your reply.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Everything is very Americanized now, where you know, and many people will say that is a good thing. People are more direct, and you have to just be, I want that from you, gimme. A lot of that goes against a lot of British people's sensibilities, and to be honest, you just have to get over it. You have to just force yourself into it. Fake it until you make it. It works wonders for me throughout school and into this. Just don't get arrogant. Don't watch yourself.
Balance it. Just balance it off.
Balance, yes, and it's the most difficult thing. But as long as you're trying, and other people will understand.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you. Last question. Any students or graduates watching this thinking about starting their own business, advice please for them.
The first thing that came into my head there was, don't do it.
Cut.
Yeah. No. So
wrong answer.
Yeah, I think it's easy to play with the idea of, oh, I fancy doing my own business. A lot of people feel like it. A lot of people feel like, oh yeah, I could really kind of do my own thing. I quite fancy being my own boss. To get to the end, to get to the finish line, you have to be 100% committed. It might take you a while. It might take you, a few months. Have a play with it, test the waters. I did. But if you're getting somewhere with it and you're unsure as to whether this is the right thing to do, pull back, evaluate everything, because you may well want to do kind of a business, but it might not be the right time for you yet. You kind of know, I think, speaking to a lot of other people, you kind of know when's the right time. And as a graduate, kind of the world's your oyster. I think it's a great idea to just have a play when you're a graduate with the idea initially, but ultimately you have to knuckle down in a way that, say, people who have been in another job, say, for many years and then starting a business in their area, they can kind of get a jump start on you. And as a result, you have to be that much more committed because you don't have that jump start there. You don't have the network in your industry. You don't have the money to spend like they can, and you don't kind of have the backup that they will have, but you have a lot more flexibility, and chances are you don't have a mortgage, so you don't have to put your house on, on the line to support your business. It's always swings and roundabouts, but I just say, just be committed. You have to be sure that you want to do it. And when you're like that, you generally enjoy it more as well. If you're uncertain, you're generally more uncomfortable. And if you're certain, then everything generally goes swimmingly initially until you run into a problem. Is that all right? That was a bit of a winding answer. Oh, I've lost you. I've lost your audio. Hang on.
Awkward? Hello?
Don't know what's happened.
Alex,
it's come back. It's come back.
We're back. Okay.
It must be soon.
Hello. Wait, thank you for that. Really awesome. Despite the microphone's best efforts, I think we did get all of that. Thank you again for your time, your insights, your advice, and I always love catching up with you and working with you as well. It's been a great fun experience for sure. Where can people find out more about IMERAI? What's the website and all that?
So I'm on Twitter. I like using Twitter. I never post.
One of those stalkers.
Yeah, I'm one of those lurkers. I'm on there every day, but I never post anything. Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Alex IMERAI, IMERAI. I'm on LinkedIn. You can drop me a connection request if you feel like it. The company is also on LinkedIn, just at IMERAI. And the website, I guess, if you're interested in looking at it, we've got some, if you're a digital design engineer who happens to be watching a student enterprise TV video, we've got some jobs open. Yeah, just Google me.
Google me, I love it. That's the easiest answer.
That's the cool answer.
Yeah, I love it. Just find me on Google, man. Look, Alex, thank you so much for your time again. Really enjoyed this. Always fun. And thank you as well for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week. That's all for this week. If there's an episode you would like us to cover on a future episode of Student Enterprise TV, please drop it in the comments or email us tv@acornenterprise.com. I really look forward to seeing you right here next Tuesday.